Alongside Batman Begins and Casino Royale, Star Trek 09 is considered one of the greatest modern reboots. Now if you were to be cynical, you could say it was the J.J. Abrams Star Wars movie before the J.J. Abrams Star Wars movie. There was a much stronger focus on action, visual effects, and heightened emotions, and in some sense it can be viewed as a dumbing down of the series. Regardless on how you feel on this, I don't think you can deny just how fresh and innovative it was. For one, the decision to include a wormhole and go back in time was inspired, and while one may not agree with the decision to change the series' tone, I think the process and how that was done so was fucking genius. So in this new Trek timeline, the key difference from the original, besides old Spock and the destruction of Vulcan, is that James Kirk's father is killed. Instead of being a mentor, George Kirk is now an icon that Jim has to live up to. So now we bring in the theme of destiny. He runs away and hides from his potential until he meets old Spock and learns of his fate. The film used Trek-like ideas and motifs to introduce Star Wars themes. The film also used this to crank up the intensity and the drama. So it's not just that George dies, it's that he dies while his child is born. The film is not just trying to be energetic, it's trying to go for the larger-than-life storytelling that Star Wars had. And speaking of Star Wars, this really was the new Star Wars until the new Star Wars. A lot of fans were not happy with that franchise, and to see a series do Star Wars better than Star Wars was quite amazing. Besides, no one was using Star Trek for anything at the time, so I saw no harm in it.
Is this Star Trek as riveting as the fans are complaining it is?
Glenn, early reviews are calling it a delightful action-adventure movie and a surefire hit.
No wonder the fans feel betrayed here.
Now as far as Into Darkness, that was...
To be honest, meh.
While it was just as energetic and heightened as the first one, it lacked that compelling hook. It also didn't help that it had some of the worst and most pandering fan service that I've ever seen. Despite all of this, it still managed to maintain a lot of the great qualities of the original. The charismatic cast, the character-driven action, and the amazing score. With all that out of the way, we get to Star Trek Beyond, which was...
To be honest, meh.
No, I will not stop using that clip until it becomes a meme, I swear.
Meh.
The key thing that this movie lacks is the Star Wars aesthetic that Abrams brought to the picture. This series is no longer about destiny or fate, and it's lacking the mystery box element that is so defining of Abrams' work.
It's the big question. So you're drawn into it. Then, of course, there's another question, and it goes on and on and on. I mean, look at, like, Star Wars. You got the droids, they meet the mysterious woman. Who's that? We don't know. Mystery box.
In theory, I actually like all of this, because Star Wars is back, and it would be great to have a series that felt like Star Trek again. This film is clearly trying to do this, focusing on an isolated incident that could very well be the premise for an original series episode. The problem, however, lies in the fact that it has absolutely no interesting concepts to hang this structure on. The science fiction themes and ideas here are paper thin, and can be basically boiled down to, working together is bad. I disagree, working together is good. That's not a moral dilemma, that's something you put in a fucking Sesame Street episode.
I think we've just landed again, Captain. Another surprise!
This film both fails to utilize the Star Wars elements that made the first one great, and it fails to have any of the interesting sci-fi ideas that define the series. So in a weird way, if Star Trek 09 is an impersonation of a Star Trek film, then Star Trek Beyond is an impersonation of a Star Trek film. Jesus Christ, I've gone too deep. I think the key difference here is in the priorities of these films. Star Trek Beyond isn't focused on themes or ideas, it's focused on action.
What's up? Ready up!
Remember in my Spider-Man 2 video where I argued that the film worked around the action to get to the character development? Well, here it's the other way around. For example, in Star Trek Beyond, Kirk's big arc is that he's thinking of leaving Starfleet since his heart's not in it. First, he tells this to Bones over some drinks on his birthday. He then has a conversation about it 10 minutes later, and then it has absolutely no effect on the plot whatsoever for the rest of the movie. Compare that to this scene from Wrath of Khan, where Kirk is having some drinks with Bones on his birthday. Here, they discuss how Kirk feels obsolete after finishing his 5-year voyage. This leads Kirk onto going on a training exercise with the Enterprise, but instead of being able to relive the glory days of the ship, he's instead presented with the horrors they left behind, namely... Scenes like this are pointless unless they inform the scenes that follow. Beyond still has some great character work and some interesting arcs. I particularly like how they involved the passing of Leonard Nimoy into the story, but none of these matter one iota once we get into the action scenes. The action is not driven by themes or characters, it's driven by the phrase, wouldn't it be cool if? This movie certainly has some interesting visual ideas surrounding the action sequences. While we've seen the Enterprise be destroyed before, it's never been quite on this scale, and they certainly love playing with the ship and its gravity. And speaking of gravity, the whole climax feels like it was envisioned by someone wanting to play Mario Galaxy on one of those spheric marble mazes. It's sequences like this that make it clear that the film is focused on action spectacle. Yeah, I know, a shocker. However, sequences like this are meant to thrill, and I found myself to be incredibly passive during said sequences. Don't get me wrong, I love action sequences, but things can't just be cool to be exciting. I think the reason why I was so let down by this film's spectacle is because I've been in love with the action with the other Bad Robot Abrams rebooted franchise, Mission Impossible. Now, all the installments in this franchise have sequences that can be considered gimmicks, and the priorities of both franchises are about the same. I think the key difference is how the sequences play out. In Mission Impossible, the action scenes have way more of a structure to the proceedings. They're not structured by being cool, they're structured by dramatic effect. It's the difference between using a moment because it's cool and using a moment because it's needed. I could go way more into this, and I definitely will in a future video, but for now we'll have to leave it at that. So at the end of the day, what we're left with is a pretty average action film. Now, this summer has been fucking dreadful for movies, so I can confidently say that this is one of the better movies in theaters, but that's not saying much now, is it? And if all that you're looking for is a competent action film with some fun characters, then sure, go enjoy this film, and all the power to you. But is this the quality we want out of Hollywood? The reason why I'm coming down harder on this film is because I trusted and cared for this team. Gone were the screenwriters Kurtzman and Orsi, who are infamous for connect-the-dot filmmaking. This means writing your action scenes and building a story around that. And yet, out of all the Star Trek films, this is the one that feels the most like it. Simon Pegg has criticized Hollywood for lacking ambition, and then his own summer blockbuster, which he wrote, proceeds to do the same thing. And if this franchise wants to focus on spectacle because it sells, then I get it. But don't you dare fucking tell me that it can't also be about grand philosophical ideas. Don't believe me? Exhibit A, The Matrix. Exhibit B, Nolan's entire filmography. I would love to have the next Star Trek film be like Interstellar, a film that is focused on action, spectacle, characters, and grand ideas. Also, don't perceive this as me saying that I love Interstellar. That film is incredibly flawed, and is probably my least favorite Nolan blockbuster alongside The Dark Knight Rises. But I'd rather have a Star Trek film whose flaw is that it has too many ambitions, rather than having too few.